Hello, Childfree family and friends. Cody here. We are going to be talking today on Childfree Family's presentation, Let's Talk Money on Childfree Finances, episode 11. We've made it to 11, working our way up here. And this is going to be finding a balance with saving and spending and debt and all that fun stuff. I am Cody Hetzel, the founder of Childfree Family. And for those who don't know, that is a micro social network for child-free people. There's even a cool little map. So if you have a little profile, you might make some child-free friends. It's worth checking out, childfreefamily.com. And I'm also the co-founder for the Child-Free Convention coming up in July 30th and 31st of 2022. That's the year we're in. And I'll be joined today by, he's going to be one of our speakers, and he's a big sponsor for that event as well, Dr. Jay Zigmund. Hey, Dr. Jay. He and his wife are child-free. He has a PhD in adult learning from the University of Connecticut and is a certified financial planner. Key thing to know about Dr. J is he is also a fiduciary, which means he must put the needs and interests of his clients ahead of his own. And on top of that, he is an advice-only and fee-only certified financial planner. So in other words, he's paid for his time by his clients. He doesn't get kickbacks, incentives, and all that stuff for making recommendations about products. So client pays him for his time and advice, and he helps them manage their own finances with his wealth of knowledge. Dr. J, thanks for joining us today again. Happy to have you here as always.
As always, Cody. I do like the child-free shirts. You know, you keep coming up with a different one each time. So,
well, it's the same few. They flux back and forth, but also available at childfreefamily.com. Yeah, thanks for that. And just before we delve into the nuts and bolts of this, we've got our fun disclaimer that the following views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please seek the assistance of a professional to aid you in your financial decisions. Or just a couple of guys talking child-free finances. So with that, kind of the topic we're delving into today is spending versus savings. And when is, you would think clearly spending too much is bad, but when does saving too much also, maybe affect you negatively? So we'll dive right in there. Dr. J, what do you think?
I was thinking about it, and I probably have just as many clients who I counsel to save more as spend more. And it's a balancing act. I mean, I was having the conversation with somebody the other day, and they had met all their personal goals, and they're like, all right, well, I could retire. And I'm like, dude, you could also just have some fun. But then like 2 hours later, I'll have a conversation. Yeah, you can't afford to have that fun. You can't afford that restaurant. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like we can't get that balance right. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I'm one of those people that I think that somehow it got ingrained in me to like always save. Like I was that kid growing up. Halloween comes around, got your bag of candy. That bag of candy would literally last me until Easter when you get more candy. And so then I would make that candy last until the next Halloween. Like that's probably not the best idea to keep candy laying around for like 5 or 6 months at a time, but I did. And I always had candy. My brother knew that. He tried to find the stash, but I've always been a saver. And that's just, I don't know where it came from, but I feel like I probably do save like too much.
You're over there squirreling away your nuts and, having a little pile somewhere.
Yeah, I need to have some more fun. I don't know.
So. And by the way, where it really gets interesting is in couples. When you have one spender, one saver, you also hear them as free spirit versus a saver. Ooh, it starts getting kind of kooky because, I mean, it is around your values around money.
Yeah.
And it is ingrained in us.
Our last episode, we talked about that trust factor. And yeah, if you've got someone that's a big spender and someone that's a big saver, like, yeah, if they're not communicating, that can definitely be a future issue coming down the road in any relationship, whether it's marriage or business partners or whatever it might be. So, yeah.
So is that saving habit? I got to pick on you for a second here, Cody.
Sure. Yeah.
Is that like, did you get that from your parents? Is that like a cultural thing or what do you think it is?
I mean, I don't know. Like my mom's not a saver. My dad was. He was a saver, and so I probably picked up a little bit from him. But even before then, like he always joked about me being the bigger saver than him. Like it's just always been ingrained with me for some reason. We weren't like super rich growing up or anything like that. We weren't like dirt poor either. But, I remember times where, times were tough, and maybe that just kind of stuck with me. And it's like always plan ahead, like just always.
Yeah, and it really is based on the way you were raised,
Mm.
and it can be like, your money, your family always was broke or felt like they were broke. Because, by the way, it's not always that their math is broke, but they always like worried about money, so everything becomes about saving. And then you get on the flip side, the far side is the YOLO. You only live once, just spend it. Just
Yeah.
you can always go bankrupt and just get and try it again, and like reality somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. So, Cody, I'm going to ask you again a little rough question.
Yeah.
But so let's say you die at some point. Do you really
Eventually I will die, Dr. J. Don't worry. I plan on that happening. There will be a meteor that comes from the sky and takes me out in like the year 4087.
Yeah, whatever it is. I've now been taking it like aliens take you away or whatever it is.
Mm.
Do you really care about your money at that point?
I mean, really, no. I mean, nobody really should. I mean, I would hope that if I did have funds to be distributed, that it would go to worthy causes and do good, like beyond myself. Whether or not I'm recognized, I could really care less. I don't care if there's a statue built for me and people remember who Cody was. I don't care. But if I've taken the time to accumulate any monies that exist once I'm dead, I would hope it does good.
So here's where I'm going with this. With parents, they tend to have a justification that I'm doing generational wealth and I'm giving it to my kids so I can just keep saving.
Mm-hmm.
Now, by the way, I don't always believe that. Sometimes that people just want to go to work or whatever else it is. They just can't get off the hamster wheel. But with the child-free folks, yeah, I'd like to make some donations. I'd like to, my wife wants to start an animal shelter. Cool.
Yeah.
But if I die with my last $100 in my hand, I think I won.
Yeah.
So what happens is the saving mindset can get to a point where you are doing a lot of work for no reason. On the flip side, you can spend it all and assume the meteor is coming next week. And that doesn't work either.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, I've got a brother and we're like complete opposites with money. Like, again, my mom and dad would joke that my brother would have to borrow money from me and I would charge him interest. Like he if he had money, like he was going to buy the toy or the game or whatever it was. And I would just like hoard up my dollars one at a time, my quarters. I had the little change machine that, I'd watch it go through and drop in the little container and you'd roll it up at the end, take it to the bank, whatever. But yeah, like my brother didn't do that. So even though we had the same parents and the same upbringing, he's a couple years older than me. Somehow we adopted two totally different habits as far as like saving and spending.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised by any of that, Cody, knowing you as I do. So you're not sharing secrets. But so I grew up. My father was a bus driver. My mother was disabled, and for a while he worked in real estate. This is in the '80s when real estate was hot. And for a while there, you'd have a whole bunch of money, and then you'd be broke, feast or famine. And you got to a point where like you're living high on the hog, and then all of a sudden you're broke. And money came in and went out just fast as it can. It took me a lot of time to reframe my habits around money. I was a debt person. I used to buy the new car every year, 2 years, and the payment would stay the same. So I was justifying it.
You're like, whatever. It's X amount of months still in a newer car.
I was the person at 18 driving the Mustang, that I had put a loan on. And then you realize, what the heck am I doing? And you start making that shift. And I say that only for people to know you don't have to stick to whatever you're in. There's a time in life for saving. There's a time in life for spending. And it's about, are you getting to your goals and does it make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Does that fit, Cody?
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me then. And, on the topic that we're about to dive into, like, just hit the button here. So we've got debt, which to me, the vast population, I think there was just literally a news story that came out the other day about how the average debt in America has now increased like whatever, $1,000 or $2,000 per family over, the course of the last year with inflation and everything that's happened. So yeah, the debt pile is building for the vast majority of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And here's where I'm going to pick up the hate mail, and that's okay. But The bottom line is if you're in debt, you're spending too much. And I hate to call it so cut and dry, but it is. Now, what that might mean is you're not bringing in enough income. There might be some reasons for that, but you're spending more than you bring in. That's what debt by definition says.
Mm-hmm.
You're buying stuff now that you'll pay for later, and you owe somebody for something.
Mm-hmm.
I joke about, the hardest step is to get to zero net worth, which is everything you owe, everything you own minus everything you owe is your net worth. And the zero is the hard one.
Mm-hmm.
Just get to a point where I break even. And I think the hard part is people have gotten so used to living in debt. Like, I always have a car loan. I always have a house mortgage. I always have. We're talking about consumer debt right now. If you got a credit card, average rate 16%, something like that. Keep in mind the federal rates are going up about 2%, so that will be about 18% by the end of the year. And now you're paying the banks, and you're just mortgaging your future by that debt. So this is one of the few cases, if I see people's debt, I'm going, okay, you're spending too much. By the way, when I do this with clients, they get mad at me, and it doesn't go over well. Because then there's always justifications. Well, we had to do this. My knee had to get replaced. I had to put that on there. And I had to get a new car because this one. It's always a justification. But the bottom line is you're spending too much. Does that make sense?
It does. And yeah, I'll give you a little pushback here. So like the consumer debt, are you lumping in like the medical, like you said, replacing a knee or something into the consumer debt? Or are you saying like basically going to, name the website and you get stuff in the mail or, whatever? Are you combining the two or are you separating them?
So when I look at consumer debt, I'm saying everything but your house.
Okay.
So if you owe money to somebody, then you're spending too much.
Yeah.
Now, we can go to the extreme, and the extreme is, hey, if you owe debt, you don't see the inside of a restaurant unless you work there. That's the extreme. But really what we're saying is you've bought something in the past that you couldn't afford, even if it is your knee, which I've had to do that. I've had to have the medical bill, the MRI. MRIs get really expensive if you don't have insurance. But now you owe a debt. And I can't afford to buy something until I pay off that debt. But people go, well, but it's 0%. Yeah, but you still owe it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we can get into that's a whole other topic talking about 0% and the terms in the fine print with that garbage. But I mean, yeah. So, I can see where definitely if you are living in consumer debt, clearly you're wasting money. Like you're buying a bill of goods that is not going to appreciate in value. You buy the new flat screen. Trust me, it's not going to be worth more in 5 years. You're not going to pass that along to anyone that's going to be like, oh, thank God I've got this old TV. Like go to any yard sale, estate sale, there's old TV sitting there for pennies on the dollar because technology is going to blow it away. But anyway, that's just an example. To me, and I learned this with the estate sale company that my wife and I ran, investing in items is almost always a bad investment. Like, especially if it came with a certificate of authenticity with a number, like they printed that, the company that made the good anyway. So yeah, going into consumer debt, I could agree with the stance to where it's definitely a bad thing, and you should maybe look at what your spending habits are, and if it means you don't stop by that coffee shop, every morning, treat yourself maybe once a week, but try to cut back and just wean yourself off of it, wean back and see what you can do. So yeah, I would agree with you there. And then you had talked a little bit, or at least you will talk about with homes and mortgages and that type of debt.
Yeah, so this one really causes issues when we start talking about should you pay off your house early or not. Used to be, by the way, there used to be prepayment penalties. Most mortgages don't have that anymore, so keep that in mind. And here's the difference. So my wife and I just recently moved almost a year ago now, and we moved and we got a 15-year mortgage and we paid 2.15% on the interest. By the way, that is really low. That's about as low as you would get for a mortgage.
Uh-huh.
But I'm still working on paying it off early. Why? Because I want to own the house.
Yeah.
Now, am I spending too much on other stuff? Maybe, maybe not. I've got it. Part of my goal is to pay off that mortgage over, I want to do over the next 5 years because that percentage is so low. Now that changes with current mortgage rates. So I just saw something. I was looking at average rates, and they're up close to 6% or over. That's a completely different game. Okay. So the stock market, you'll see historical averages somewhere 7-10%, depending on how you want to do the mix, whatever that is. But that's average over time. So they go, well, I can beat it in the stock market. Not really.
There's a lot of people that if you could, you'd be a uber billionaire.
Yeah. So a mortgage, a couple of things that's happened here. Used to be, and you'll hear this still a lot, well, I can write off my mortgage interest on my taxes. Yep, you can if you itemize your taxes. Most of the U.S. does not itemize their taxes anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
and that came in effect a few years back, or an administration or two ago, where they made it easier just to take a big deduction versus itemizing.
Yep, they doubled the standard deduction. Mm-hmm. So for most people, they don't itemize anymore. So that thought is gone, but people still hold on to it.
Society hasn't caught on to that idea yet, because I still hear people saying that it's like, well, having a mortgage is a great thing. You get to write off the interest. And then I have to tell them, it's like the same thing you just did. It's like, well, not really, unless you're itemizing everything that you're doing.
Yeah. And, I use a CPA for my taxes, and I send them all the stuff, and it includes the mortgage interest statement. It doesn't mean anything. It just gets in a box, and they go, nope, not worth it.
but they'll plug it in their magic computer machine will basically say, okay, thanks for all those numbers. You're still going to take the standard deduction regardless of all this information.
Yep. So paying off your mortgage actually is probably a good idea for most people, because it's a guaranteed return. If you got a mortgage right now, 6% guaranteed return, safe return, that's a pretty good return on your money. And essentially, you're not paying taxes on that return. So if I invested in the stock market, I pay taxes on what I make. Mm-hmm. If I pay off the mortgage, I don't have to pay tax on it. Mm-hmm. Now, people get stuck and say, well, I'll never pay up. Here's the thing. If you pay off your house, retirement's easy. I mean, your house, if you have no housing expense, your expenses are groceries and utilities, which you can actually cut back if it makes sense. I mean, you don't have to buy the fancy groceries, go to Aldi instead of Whole Foods, and you can live pretty easily if you've already paid it off. The bonus of when you pay off all your debt, what you got left over is money, and it's your money. What do you think, Cody?
Well, and that seems to be sometimes the tightrope that people walk. My wife and I had that discussion of, should we pay off our house or just live off whatever, pay the interest rates and whatever for the next 10 years or whatever is left on it. I don't even know. Or pay it off and own our house like it's ours. And there we go. We just pay the city and county taxes and utilities and all that fun stuff. And we just weighed the pros and the cons, and we said, it makes more sense just to pay the house off. So for us, it made sense because, you could look into, like you said about the stock market, you can try to play with averages and numbers and percentages. And it's like, well, we can invest this money and make more money versus what our house might appreciate at. And what we've seen with the housing market recently, like housing prices and values have gone bonkers, like high. This is 2022. So if you're in the future and everything's crashed, sorry. But at least now in 2022, housing prices have gone up. So it was a good investment to go ahead and pay that off and not have to worry about a mortgage or anything like that versus gambling it in the stock market, which right now is like up and down every other day.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about spending and saving too much. So this is a balancing act. Mm-hmm. So maybe put a little extra towards your mortgage. That way, keep in mind, whatever you put extra, you want to put it directly to the principal, not as an extra payment. So you actually bring it down. Some people also can do, they pay every other week for the payments. Only sign up for that if that's free, by the way, because some banks will charge you for the convenience fee. I don't know what that is, but they do.
They love a fee.
They just got to make some money anyway. The bonus if you pay every other week is actually you'll get ahead a little and you'll pay one extra payment a year. There's lots of ways to do it. But don't forget to pay off your mortgage and make it a goal somewhere.
And that's kind of the mindset that a lot of people, it's like, well, this mortgage is 15 years, 30 years. It's like, I'm never going to pay it off anyway. They might plan on like knowing that they're going to move. It's like, well, I'm not even going to live in this house for then. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but you're exactly right. And that's something that my wife and I happen to have just picked up along the way is when you make those extra payments is that you specifically tell them that this is for the principal. Because if you don't, they're just going to plug it in toward interest like a regular payment. And it's going to take you even longer to pay it down. And I think the same thing might be true on car payments. I don't know. It depends on the car and what you have going on. But if you're paying anything down faster, make sure you know that if you put money into it, that it goes to the principal balance that you owe, and you're not paying interest and fees and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, and if you're going to move, I hear this one a lot. I shouldn't pay off my mortgage because I'm going to move. Well, here's the bonus. I pay off my house, I sell it, I take the money from that and put it in what I've moved to.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like it's going away.
You're your own bank.
So, the bonus is if you have a paid off house, you take the cash and do whatever you want. For my book, I just did an interview with some people, Amelia and Matt. During the middle of COVID, they had a paid off house, and one of them had a really bad job. Wasn't working out. So they said, screw it. We're moving to Colorado from Michigan. The problem is when you don't have a job, you can't get a mortgage. But what they did, they took the cash from the house that they had and just bought something in cash. It was beautiful. I mean, that's what you want to be working towards.
Yeah. And some people might hear what we're saying, this being a pipe dream, because it's hard for, the next gen, forever, it's always hard getting your first house. And it seems like it's exponentially hard now for people to qualify for their mortgages with the rates and the prices of values of homes. So they might be just hearing all this is just white noise, but put it in the back of your mind of everything we're saying, because it will make sense when you get to that point. And just also kind of another thing that I always heard as far as debt goes, and to me, it's the myth of make sure you always have a balance on your credit card, because that will help you build and improve your credit score. And I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. J? I know what mine are. I think it's not correct, but people always say it too.
So if you're worried about credit score, here's what I do. Take your credit card, put your Netflix subscription on it, which, by the way, people are leaving Netflix now, so put your Hulu on it.
or whatever's coming down the road.
Whatever your file, Disney Plus, HBO Max, whatever. You put it on there. It's a $20 a month charge, and you have it automatically paid off every month. It'll register as good, and you don't have to ever use that credit card again. And it's just a charge to keep it alive, and it works fine. You should have a balance. No. Okay. There are people who can handle credit cards, and there are people who can't. You need to know which one you are. If you can't handle them, you need to get rid of them completely. If you can handle them, what I'm saying handle them mean zero balance at all times. You're okay. The problem is you get caught 1 or 2 months where you haven't paid off the whole thing, and now you're paying 20% interest on and it just goes downhill really quick. Yeah.
And so we'll talk a little bit about maybe setting some goals to get out of that debt.
So all right, if we're out of debt, we're kind of going, what do we want to do? The next step is to set a set of goals that you're going to measure yourself against. So, Cody, at what age do you want to retire?
Tomorrow. Whenever you're watching this, yesterday.
So let's say Cody wanted to retire at 55. Why? Because it makes my math easy. Part of what you're trying to do is figure out what type of life do you want to live. So I talk about the file versus fire. Do you want to shut off work completely? That's retire early. Or do you want to file, which is that dial back? Do you want to do a little business, little side thing? By the way, child-free folks, more on the file side. I want to do something. I want to follow my passion. I want to start the cupcake shop. Cool. Those are goals. It's also going to change if your goal is to shut off work or to keep working. But you set a goal. So let's say you said 55, I want to retire, which, by the way, still might sound like a pipe dream to some people, but it's possible. Let's set a goal. The next step is, it's not really about the age. It's about $1. I need to cover a certain amount of expenses. Now, if you've paid off your house, your expenses in retirement are pretty cheap. And actually, retiring early becomes somewhat easy. But let's say your magic number, and we call them magic numbers because it's something to hit, it's a goal, is $2 million. What that $2 million reflects is, all right, I need $80,000 a year for my expense for the rest of my life, or whatever number fits for them. By the way, lots of general rules out there for it. The real answer is figure out what you're going to spend on expenses, number of years you need to cover it, how much you're going to get out, and do the math. Keep in mind, all the general rules assume you have kids. So we're different. So, okay, set a goal, 55 and $2 million. Here's the reason why the goal is important. That's what you're measuring against. And the problem is when we get to this, am I spending too much or am I saving too much? The actual right question is, am I making enough progress to my goal? Am I going to hit my goal? if I need $2 million and I'm 40 and I've got 15 years to do it, I can do the math out and I know what I have to do. But what happens is people don't set that goal. They go, I want to retire early. Well, what the hell does that mean? I mean, is 62 early? Is 42 early? In the fire literature, they talk about, well, are you lean firing, which is ramen noodles, or am I fat firing where I have a private chef? I mean, what type of retirement are we talking about here? What do you think, Cody?
Yeah, everyone's got different aspirations of what their retirement's going to be. I mean, the fact that if someone's watching this right now, like, yeah, this is what I like to do, Child-Free Family, like delve into the child-free lifestyle, the community, help, promote and advocate for it. And so that's what I want to do. So will I ever truly retire? I don't know, because I'm always going to have this to kind of do, hopefully, and exist. So yeah, definitely file would be more of what I would lean into versus fire, because as nice as it is to think of sitting on the beach with a Mai Tai, I don't think I could do that every day. I would get bored. Like, I have to do something to really to help others. That's the whole point of me doing this. It's like, I want to help other people.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those hard steps with financial planning. I often have to spend multiple sessions working with people, kind of, so what? What do you want to do? What's the purpose of what you're doing? And you get that look like, wait, what? When do you want to stop? Do you want to keep going? Do you want to? And people lose their mind on this one. So I use a set of 3 questions. They're from George Kinder. And I'm going to run them through quick, and Cody can include a link that has the detail. But the first question is, if you were financially independent, you had all the money in the world, what would you do? And it's really interesting because people pause and either they start dreaming, or every once in a while I get people go, well, I'm already there. And I'm like, well, if you're already there, you're saving too much. All right, so we'll come back to that. So the first question is kind of, what would you do if you had all the money? The second question is, doctor comes to you and says you have 5 to 10 years to live. What would you do differently? How would you change your life? And now here's the interesting one on that one. On that question, I see a lot of people go, well, then I would, and they have an immediate answer, they would change their life. My next question usually to them is, well, why don't you do that now? That's a separate question. So, all right, 5 to 10 years. And the last question is, okay, doctor says you got 24 hours to live. How do you feel? What are your regrets? What do you want to go? And these 3 questions, they're part of life planning and George Kinder's approach. Great questions to dig in and look at. And I encourage people to journal on them and say, what matters in my life? By the way, for most people, it's not money. I mean, like 99% of people, it's not actually the money. It's what the money gets you. It's the life it gets you. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about goals. We're talking about clear understanding of what do you want your life to look like. And that can be really hard when you're struggling. You're like, you barely got your head above water, and I'm asking you, what do you want to do with your life? And you're like, I want to breathe. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
But the goals are what's going to tell you, are we going in the right direction and are we meeting? What do you think about that, Cody?
I mean, yeah, it definitely gives you, something to think about as far as structuring your life. You do, again, do a search on the internet for deathbed confessions. And one of the biggest ones is always, I regret working too hard and not, seeing family more or traveling more or, whatever, getting involved in the community more. But working too much is like number 1, like 9 times out of 10. So yeah, it's like, what would you do if that was, within 24 hours? Like, there's only so much you do in 24 hours. I'll just make sure that my wife is set up and knows all the passwords to everything. And, and there you go, watch the sunset. But if it's 5 to 10 years, I mean, fortunately, I'm kind of doing that right now. So I think I've maybe hit a sweet spot as far as finding a passion that I can get involved with and enjoy and help cultivate and mold. So yeah, I guess that's where I am. But will that change in a year, 2 years, 3 years? Yeah, maybe. It's fluid. But like you're saying, people who are watching this and they're X amount of thousands of dollars in debt, could be 1,000, could be 100,000 in debt. And they're saying, well, yeah, I just have to work. Like, there's no way I can not work and just, take 5. So that's where it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is look at what you're spending it on. It's like, is it consumer debt? then you need to reassess your situation. If it's a unfortunate accident or something that is a medical debt that you've had since birth, that's another animal. But consumer debt, like to me, you can fix consumer debt. You just have to change your mindset. Stepping inside a box store to me is a rare thing. I'll rarely go shopping, and that's just, I just don't like it. I don't know. That's just me. But some people say, hey, it's therapy to go shopping, and they spend money. And again, when we did estate sales, we would go into houses. I can't tell you how many items we saw that were literally still in the shopping bag with the receipts and the tags. They came home, put it in the closet, and walked away from it. But that was their social interaction. They would go to the mall and shop, or whatever, Walmart or whatever, and they would just shop for stuff, and they would come home and they would never even use it. And again, it's one of those things where debt can eat you alive.
Yeah, and by the way, you're more on that saver side, so I'm going, maybe you should go shopping. Now, by the way, it's got to be for something that helps you there, and it's just not mindless spending. I think the challenge with goals is it's almost like too hard to put it down in writing and say, okay, this is it. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. If you don't have a goal, it's like getting in your car and driving aimlessly. You're going to get nowhere. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You need to have some direction. And here's what's the challenge is. The challenge is, if you have your goals, are you making enough progress?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I got a quick comment here from Minnie coming in. It says, for me, I want off disability social assistance while my body is still able to work when I can. So that to me sounds like someone who they're looking ahead and they say, hey, I can work right now. I'm going to work my tail off and try to eliminate the debt that might be in existence and set yourself up for success in the future.
Yeah. And the U.S., unfortunately, we don't do well at supporting people that are disabled. I mean, just, it is what it is.
Pick yourself up by your bootstraps. You can do it. Like, yeah.
I mean, the system's broken. The disability system's broken is what it is. But that becomes that goal. Okay. My personal goal in there is getting back to work, because there's a dignity in work, and there's a component that goes with that. And I got other people that are disabled that I work with, and I'm like, dude, relax, you're fine. But they're like, oh, I got to go back to work. I'm like, no, you need to heal. So there's like that balancing act that goes with that, because if my goal is to be healthy and get off disability, then that's where all my time and effort should go. Now, if I'm doing that because I want to gain more money for some reason, well, then that's a different question than do I want to do it for my own health? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And so we've talked about debt. We've talked about setting goals. And so let's say, your goal is to be debt free. Like, to me, debt free is ground level. Like you said, a lot of people are going to work their way up from having a negative net worth and debt to equaling zero. Your net worth is now zero. That is a success. Like, congratulations, you're worth zero, which means you don't owe anybody anything, which is go pick up a quarter on the street, boom, like you're in the positive. It's a lot easier to increase your net worth when you are out of that negative area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the challenge with a goal of getting out of debt is what people do is, well, I'll put what's left over this month towards my debt, which is always nothing. I mean, or very little or whatever. Or, like, I see these apps where you can round up and pay off your debt. I'm like, 12 cents at a time is going to be a long time to pay off your debt. So if we have a goal of debt free, let's say I want to pay off $6,000 in debt this year. Well, then I got to put $500 a month towards it. I can make it out into monthly, and then I can see, am I spending or saving too much? I can also see, do I have to pick up a gig job, or do I have to, I have somebody the other day, I was working at Lowe's and Home Depot are hiring, and they're paying good money with benefits for gig work. Well, they put it all towards debt, and that makes sense because now I've got a goal, $500 a month. I know if I'm getting there. The other challenge, though, with that goal is we start getting to, well, I could be saving too much because I cut back way too much. My family's starving because, my wife's not getting any food. Well, then we went too far. So we just got to go to that goal, set the goal, stick by it, and move forward.
So let's talk about saving real quick. So now, you are trying to increase your savings. Let's talk about that, what it's looking like coming down the road.
Yeah. So now we're trying to get to 2 million. We're like, all right, we're 0. Our goal is 2 million. That's a long time. There's a lot there between 0 and 2 million in that example. And here's what we're doing is we've got to have a balance between what we're saving and what we're expecting to make on our investments. The problem is the last couple of years have been really good in the stock market. This year's starting off not as good. And that's normal. The stock market has ups and downs. That's expected. And then we have inflation, which goes with it. What's challenging? So we need to make some good assumptions about what can we put towards our goal and what can we expect to make. Now, this depends on how you're invested, what you're invested in, all that. But you can start doing some math. So there are compound interest calculators that you can say, okay, I think I'm going to make 7% of my money. By the way, back up that data. You need to have a good reason for your assumptions. And now you can estimate how much do I need to save per year to get to this next goal. Now, keep in mind that assumes you've already saved up an emergency fund, because that's a separate set of money you got to put aside. 3 to 6 months for emergencies. If your job is more flexible, like, who knows what's going to happen? 6 months. If it's more strict, you can go closer to 3. But I got an emergency savings. Now I'm going to the goal. I've got to have some type of good prediction that says this should get me to my goal. Does that make sense?
It does. And just talking about savings and the nest egg, rainy day fund, whatever it might be, I've heard people say it's like, oh, I'm debt free because they don't have a mortgage per se. But then they say, well, I've got X amount in savings. It's like, but no, that's your emergency fund. You don't that's not necessarily what is going to be set aside for retirement down the road. That's your 3 month, 6 month emergency plan. So that needs to me, that needs to be compartmentalized. That doesn't exist unless you need it. That's why it's there. But yeah, so you start saving and saving and saving, and then you get to the point to where this is the crux of it for me. You're saving too much now. When do you know that you're just hitting yourself over the head because you've been told stay out of debt, and now you're saving to almost a fault to where it's not helping you as much as it could.
Yeah. So here's where it gets fun. And I'm going to share a little screen with you.
Yeah.
1 second. So you can do a compound calculator. It gives you an idea what you got to save. Or what you can do is this simulations. We love simulations in the financial world. What this looks at, by the way, this is all fake numbers. Don't use these for yourself. This person has a goal. And right now they have an 82% probability of success. So that takes in a lot of assumptions about what they're investing over time. And probability of success in this one is not running out of money. This is why it's 82 is somewhere down here in the 88. There's a chance they'll run out of money. So what happens is this is kind of the fancy way of saying, am I making enough progress towards my goal where I can let up? Because here's what happens. If you set a big goal, let's say I'm retiring that 2 million. We get into what's called the boring middle, where we're making progress, but there's no excitement. It's kind of, by the way, you want your investments to have no excitement. That's ideal. But you're kind of just making progress. You're like, am I doing well enough? Well, part of this is what probability of success are you willing to accept? For me, it's kind of 85%. I'm going, I'll take a little chances because I'll adjust as it goes along. And that's me personally. That may not be your answer. You might want 100% probability of success, whatever it is. And you're seeing, am I making the steps? Now, if I'm 40, in this example, I'm 33, and I'm making enough progress to probability of 82%, I'm saving enough. But this is where people lose their mind. Because they're like, well, if I saved more, I could have more. Or I could do it faster. And I go, well, do you like your goal? Is it still a good goal? If it's still a good goal, then your numbers say you're fine. Why are you putting more towards it?
And that gets into the work-life balance too. So of course, if there's hours in the day, of course you could work more.
Yeah, and so this is a child-free problem because what happens is because we might have 2 incomes, might have extra money. Well, now I'm asking the question of going, well, are you still good with your goal? if your goal is still 55 and 2 million, that extra money, that's vacation money or whatever you want. Put in that nice garden if you want. I don't care. Whatever that looks like. Rescue some dogs, whatever. But if you're not on that progress, then we're spending too much. And it's a balancing act. And Cody, you said, hey, you're a saver. And I bet you if I showed you a chart like this on this and said, hey, you're reaching your goal, you're going to go, well, but maybe I could save more.
And I would.
How'd I know? But that's the thing. Now you've moved the goalposts.
Mm-hmm.
If your goal was 55 and 2 million or whatever it is, once you hit it, the extra money is extra. Because here's the thing. If I follow out that example, the example I showed you, they at the end could have somewhere like $100 million on hand when they die. What good is that? All right. We start just running it up like it's a scoreboard. I'm better. I need more commas or more zeros in my bank account. Well, now it's not all getting there. And by the way, I'll see this a lot. People have maxed out their retirements. They're doing well. And their cash reserves just keep growing. I'm looking at it and they need $70,000 for the emergency fund, but they have $200,000 in cash. And I'm like, why? Well, just in case. In case of what? You need to buy another house? I mean, is there a problem? Is there a goal? And that money in cash, by the way, is not invested. It's not growing. So we're not even getting to another goal. And so my challenge is don't move the goalposts. If you set 55 as your retirement age, cool. Getting to it at 52 is not going to change your life because you already decided 55 was the right number for you. What do you think about that?
I mean, well, even better than that, I've got another great comment from Minnie here. So she's coming out. She's saying, so if you get your investments above 100,000 and then let compound interest do the work, is that it? Not knowing the age, I know you need those. It's certain metrics to figure this out, but is that kind of the goal for some people? Is to, hey, come up with your number and then say, okay, you can ease off of putting money towards the retirement or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I've worked with some people where the money they have right now, if you project it out to their retirement age, they're done. So that is an option. There is this kind of the $100,000. People go, well, making the first 100,000 the hardest, and then the other. Well, actually, the hardest is getting to zero.
Zero. Yeah.
Start with that one. That one's the real hard one. Compound interest starts at $1. Okay. So what happens is now you're getting interest on the interest and you're building. So what happens is if you have a big chunk of money now, you might have already reached your retirement goal without knowing it. And I've done this with people. I do the math and I show them, okay, you can retire. And they're like,
wait, what?
Well, no, I have. And I'm like, the numbers say you're fine. By the way, their head says something else because that compound interest is worth for them. The 100,000 might be a goal, but then for what? So I don't want $100,000 to be a goal. I want it to be, what does that $100,000 get you? If that $100,000 is enough to pay off the house, or it gets you that purchase you need to make, whatever that might be for you, that's fine. Don't think about the dollars, but think about what it gets you. How's that sound, Cody?
Yeah, it again, it's having something for your money to do. It gives your money, like you said before, give your money a job. Is it going to make little money babies and work in interest, or is it going to help pay off the house so you can then get that burden off your shoulders and start to aim for the debt-free life and aim for early retirement, achieve fire, file, whatever it might be.
So what's your magic number, Cody? When can you quit?
I mean, 2 million sounds fine for me.
Why?
It's just a nice round number that everybody uses. But then again, I mean, that's the thing. In the future, again, $1 million ain't what it was back in the 90s, the 80s, the 70s. Totally different world now. We'll probably all see our first trillionaire, before we're dead. So things are going to change.
Yeah. So let me work this one through, because everybody has magic numbers: 1 million, 2 million, 4 million, 5. I don't care. So the first thing is the simulations. When you do those, you actually inflate money to go with it. So you'll know your current expenses, where it goes in the future, and that's all part of it. So that's part of what you're doing. With the simulations, we're doing 1,000 simulations from like the market's destroyed to the market's phenomenal, and using that as a guideline to make some decisions. So like it has things in that simulation that could never occur essentially, and things that could occur, and it averages those out. But let's say, okay, 2 million. I have people that have these magic numbers, and then I do the math. Well, they got the general rule. So you'll hear about the safe withdrawal rate of 4%. By the way, some debate on that. Is it 3.5, 4, 4.5, whatever. But let's use 4% because my math works well for that. So that's saying $80,000 a year. Cody, are your expenses right now $80,000 a year?
They are not.
Are they more or less?
Less, because I'm a cheap person. So
cool. Then you don't need 2 million.
Wait, what? See that?
No, but this is what happens to people.
It doesn't compute to my brain.
So I had this moment with myself. I did my numbers. My retirement's already set. So I could quit now and watch Netflix. But that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I need a different goal. I call it the midlife crisis for child-free folks. You hit your financial goals, your personal goals, your professional goals, and then what? And like you get this like surprise Pikachu face of just, what do I do? And I had that at about 40. I actually ended up, I ran a maple syrup farm for a while. I sold on eBay and Amazon.
I can see that. I can see you on a tractor putzing around.
It was awesome. Driving a tractor is fun. Okay.
I've driven. I used to work on a horse farm haying. The worst job ever. I would dig a ditch before I ever hay again. And haying it. Oh God.
but it was awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
But it didn't. The problem was I had hit my goals, and this is where people like lock up. So I had to reframe it and say, okay, what do I enjoy? Well, I enjoy helping people. That's what I'm doing now. I help people get to their goals. Okay, cool. That gave me the job. But then I'm like, well, what the hell do I do with my money? Because it's not about retirement anymore.
Yeah.
My answer was, I'm going to buy a big old boat and travel the world. My wife and I know that, by the time I hit 59, that's it. I'm done. And I'm on the water somewhere. If she wants to come with me, she's welcome to. But that's my goal. And it's a big old expensive boat. Now, if I don't hit the goal and I get a okay boat, that's fine. But I know what I want and I can put it towards it and I can work the math backwards. And I know if I'm saving enough, making enough, or spending enough. But the challenge is not to move the goalposts just so that like I said, well, I can retire faster or with more money.
Yeah.
That's not improving your life. So it's not making you happier.
In the hypothetical scenario we talked about with the 2 million in my brain, the 80,000 a year, and then not needing it, like the goalpost, what happens to the goalpost? By
the way, this is where people do a lot of soul searching. So now what? And we get into there's a debate. You call it the middle class work ethic, the Puritan work ethic, the Protestant work ethic, whatever you want to call it. That we're just used to living in the hamster wheel and just, we got to work, got to do it, got it. And the other problem with that is we do this thing. Hey, Cody, what do you do for a living? And there's like that. Well, I do nothing. And you're like, oh, you're a bum? No, I've made my numbers. I don't have to, But what happens is it's ingrained in us. There's dignity in work. You got to do something. You got to. Oh, you're retired? Okay. What are you doing with your time? Nothing. Whoa, what does that mean? Don't you want to volunteer? And I think the hard part of that is it's how we measure ourselves, unfortunately. Well, how much do you make? How much you make does not determine your value, but it's just a societal thing that jumps in there. And okay, great. Let's say Cody is at $2 million. How much do you make? It's $80,000 a year he's making, but it doesn't feel the same because you're not out in the field working for it. What do you think about that? Yeah,
you're not sitting in traffic. You don't feel like you don't feel like you're earning that money. The money is now working for you, which is the goal for anyone that gets that scenario. You want the money to work for you and to your future self to pay you. That's essentially what it boils down to. And if you think about growing up, it's go to school, get a job, and then you've got the options of get married and then the options of have kid. but it's never, you don't ever hear retire or stop working. That's definitely nowhere in like the script that we're given to follow. So I can see why this is so ingrained in us, especially in the United States society. Just work, like you work to a nub, and that's you. If you've got time in the day, get another job. Like there you go, get a side gig, get a hustle, whatever you got, whatever you want to call it, and start doing that. And because the goal is to retire in the future, but I mean, the way that society is setting it up, corporate America is setting it up, is it's all on our shoulders to do it. Yeah, you might have a company that has a 401k. You might have a company that does a match. Those, I mean, there's the odds of finding that are even slim to none for a lot of folks. So it falls on you to take care of yourself. And unfortunately, the first experiences a lot of us have in life, let's say at 18, 19 years old, is debt. Because unless you're getting help from your parents or family members or whatever, you're gonna owe money to somebody because you have to buy things to start your life out. And so people become comfortable in that, and it's like, yep, let's hop on the hamster wheel and let's start running, and that's it.
So let me mess with you, Cody.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Why not? So I give you that $2 million, and you now have $2 million in the bank, and let's say your housing expenses and everything else is $40,000, half of that. Well, now I go to Cody and go, all right, Cody, spend 40 grand a year. And his head explodes.
It would. There's an old movie called Brewster's Millions. If you haven't seen it, it's a great one. Richard Pryor, I recommend it.
Yeah. So okay. So now Cody says, all right, I'm just going to keep that $40,000 in the market. Well, that's compounding. And now I do the math, and he's dying with $40 million. I'm making it up, but $40 million in the bank. And I'm going, Cody, you just spent your entire life saving, and what you get is a $40 million will, which, by the way, now comes with taxes that go with it, because everything over $24 million is now taxed. So you're giving half of that to the government. For what?
Yeah. And that gets us to where we're ending, which is saving too much. It's like finding that number and, working with the metrics, use the calculators, whatever, and find that number. And find out when you are now saving too much. It's like that's when you can ease off. If you don't enjoy your job, you don't have to do it. Find something that you want to do, whether you're paid for it or whether it's volunteer or a passion or whatever. That's when you get to step into the next phase of your life, because your goalpost is sitting right there in front of you. Like you might have already passed it, and now you're in the end zone. Like party time.
Yeah, and so let me talk about a specific child-free issue with this one. I'm frequently finding couples where both are working, maybe they're making about the same, and one's miserable at their job. My first answer is quit. And they're like, whoa, I can't do that. Yeah. And I'm like, you're paying your bills, you're not in debt, you can live on one salary, quit. Do something different. They're like, well, but I'll never make what I make. That's okay. It's not always about chasing the top dollar.
And everything you're saying is blasphemy. That's exactly what we've all been told not to. It's like, no, you keep working. You hate your job, you keep going. Like that's what you do.
If you hit your number and you want to go and practice to be the best flutist in the world, do it. It doesn't matter what it is. And I'm having these conversations all the time. People are like, well, no, I have to. No, you don't have to do nothing. Okay. It's interesting. As child-free folks, we already threw out the life script by not having kids. But when I ask people to throw out the life script of just like gathering zeros, they're like, no!
You're right, dude. You're right. Yeah, it's like, it's just ingrained. Like, like I said, go to school, get a job, and then you choose to get married and you choose to have kids. But it's go to school, get a job. Like, even if that's all you do, you're going to get a job forever. That's just ingrained in us.
Yeah, I don't know. We need to set ourselves free. By the way, you'll probably not do that yourself. You're probably going to need to work with somebody to help you on that one. Mm-hmm. Like some people are like a lot of work because it's just the way we're raised. But because we're child-free and we're not worried about passing on to another generation, there comes a point where you got enough. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do something.
Yeah.
It's just, that's the challenge. And I can see Cody, like his head is spinning. He's like, I got to save. I got to put those nuts in the tree.
Yeah. Well, and you're working on great. I just want to plug it real quick. you've got a group that's meeting up and talking about this kind of stuff is just beyond beneficial. And tell us a little bit about what you're doing. Currently, it's on Fridays.
Yep. So childfreewealth.com is my website. I actually offer a open office hours on Fridays, 10 a.m. Central, so you can actually come talk about this stuff. If you don't want to do it in a group, I also do individual meetings, and you can get an intro meeting there, no cost. And I also got a new book coming out, Portraits of Childfree Wealth, that looks at these type of issues. I got 26 stories of people that are trying to figure it out. I got people that are broke, and I got people that retired in their 30s. And what you'll hear is a lot of this debate about, am I doing it right? And what am I doing? And how is it different from being child free? And it's just helpful to have the conversation and to think it through.
Yeah. And so, I mean, Jay's a wealth of info, folks. Take him up on it. Go to childfreewealth.com, join the group, have a private session, whatever it might be. But at least find out where you are on the map. What are your goalposts? Get all that set. Jay can help you out getting that much ahead. And with that in mind, our next episode, episode 12, will be Investing 101. So we're going to talk a little bit about 401ks and IRAs and Roths and stocks and bonds and all that fun stuff that, hopefully will set you up and, make getting to that goalpost a little bit easier.
Yep.
So with that being said, Dr. J, thank you for your time. Everyone who's watched, many thanks for the comments. Appreciate that. And we will catch everybody next time.